Might think because you're in Dubai and you're paying zero personal tax that you don't have to do any tax filings. That is incorrect if you're coming here to run a business. So let's talk about corporate tax filings in Dubai. You want to pay attention because there are quite a lot of hefty fines if you get this wrong. If you were under the impression that you didn't have to file corporate taxes or any kind of tax returns in the UAE, you would have been correct up until this year because every company has to file corporation tax returns now in September of 2025. This is the first time this has happened. Now, I had a meeting with an accountant yesterday to clarify my position because I'm not going to lie, this has been something that's been in the back of my mind. It's been a little bit stressful because finding information, the correct information, has been a little bit difficult online. And so if you're looking to move to Dubai, like many people are, you're setting up a business like me, the people that you use to set up your business is a really important factor in this equation. You want to make sure that you're picking a company that understands how business works here in Dubai. And I cannot recommend enough the guys at GenZone. They can help you with the business registration front to end, from registering the business, picking your free zone, getting your medicals done, your bank account, everything, all the way to helping you with your corporation tax filings. Now, their customer service is absolutely stellar. I've had a number of people in the Telegram group also use them. They haven't been able to say good enough things about Kevin and the team. So if you're serious about moving to Dubai, you want expert help setting up your business and an expert relationship to carry you through your time here running your business, then I'm going to leave a link to GenZone in the comment section, pinned, and in the description. Go book a free, no obligation call with them to see how they can help you. So there's good and bad news when it comes to corporation tax in the UAE. Let's start with the good news first. If you're coming from the UK like I am and like many people are, you'll be familiar with how corporation tax works. It's a tax on your profits. In the UK, it's 20%. In the UAE, it is 9%. Therein lies the good news. You're still allowed your expenses to be deducted to reduce your profit because essentially it's a tax on your profit. But here in the UAE, there is also a threshold of 375,000 dirhams that you have to hit before you have to pay your 9% corporation tax. So from a tax point of view, for a business owner, it means you actually get to keep more of your money because you're paying less tax. Now, the bad news is this: if you're coming over to the UAE to register a business like I have done and like many other people are, it's extremely important you actually register your business with the Federal Tax Authority when you arrive. A lot of people don't get told that that's an important component of what they need to do when they move and when their business is set up. And it goes back to my point of working with someone who knows the intricacies of how things work here in Dubai. And again, the guys at GenZone are the ones that are going to help you out with all of that, making sure that you are literally ticking all of the boxes that you don't even know at the point when you're registering your business exist. Now, if you fail to register your business for federal taxes, I believe the fine is something like 10,000 dirhams. It's a pretty hefty fine. And one thing that I'm learning here is that if you don't adhere to the rules, the fines, they don't play around with the fines. They really go at it with the fines. So that's the bad news, and that's the good news of corporation tax in the UAE. Also worth mentioning here is VAT, because they do have VAT here in Dubai. It's charged at 5%, which is considerably lower than what we charge in the UK, but there are some similarities. So the first similarity is that you have to file your VAT returns here quarterly. The second similarity is that just like in the UK, there is a threshold that your turnover hits that makes it compulsory for you to charge VAT. So here in Dubai, it's 187,000 dirhams. So the minute your revenue passes that, your turnover passes that, you've got to register and charge 5% VAT. Now, it is worthwhile noting that if you are coming here to set up your business, when you're doing your cash flow modeling and you're planning where your income is going to come from and who you're going to be working with, you have to understand when the VAT charge is applicable. So, for example, if you are doing something called exported services, for example, right? And that means you're servicing a client back home in the UK or outside of the UAE, then VAT is not charged. Again, this is very similar to the UK, right? You're not charging VAT if you're providing services or companies outside of the country. But if you are in Dubai working with local businesses and you're over 187,000 dirhams in turnover, then yes, you're going to have to pay 5% VAT, well, charge 5% VAT. And you want to make sure you get your filings right, because again, if you get this wrong, not only could you be out of pocket, but you could also see a fine because you've not paid attention to the detail. Now, one of the first things I really struggled with was understanding when my first filing is due. And I had to sit down with an accountant to get clarity on this, because when you go onto the websites, again, they are translating from Arabic to English. So it isn't always abundantly clear what is meant by the text on the website because of that translation, because English is not their first language. And don't get me wrong, everyone here speaks fantastic English, but things get lost in translation, if that makes any sense. So for me, understanding when exactly is my first filing due is very, very important, because I don't want to get fined at the end of the day. So I sat down with an accountant, and the accountant basically said to me, you need to check your federal tax authority certificate. So when you register your business, if it's done correctly and you're registered with the FTA, they will send you a certificate. And on the certificate, it's going to tell you when your first filing is due. This one is mine. So clearly in this section right here, it tells me that my first corporate tax filing is due in September of 2026. Now, it is worth noting that if you don't cross the 375,000 dirham threshold to pay corporation tax, that doesn't mean that you haven't got to file your returns. You still have to file the return, even if you don't have any corporation tax to pay. And it can be confusing, right? Because you might assume, well, I'm not past that, so I don't need to file a return. Yes, you do. And it's really important that you understand that, and you have people that you can work with, that you can ask questions to, who understand it. Because let me just take you through some of the fines. The fines are absolutely crazy. So if you're late filing your returns, it's 500 dirhams a month fine. 500 dirhams a month for the first 12 months. If you go into year 2, from the 13th month, it's 1,000 dirhams, right? We've already talked about late registration penalty, 10,000 dirhams. If you do not keep the correct records, okay, it's 10,000 dirhams per violation for not maintaining the required financial records. What financial records do you need to keep hold of, you may ask? You need to speak to an accountant, because again, you need someone here locally that knows what you should be keeping. If you have repeated violations, that 10,000 dirham penalty jumps to 20,000. 20,000. If you file incorrectly, it's a 500 dirham penalty. If you are late, for example, paying your taxes at 14% per annum calculated monthly, that you're going to pay in fines. So they don't mess around with fines. And I think a lot of people, when they move here, will be thinking, okay, well, fantastic, pay less tax, great lifestyle, it's much, much safer. All the things, these things are absolutely true. But if you get something wrong that you weren't exactly confident in knowing about or didn't know about, those fines can very, very quickly add up. And I don't necessarily want to be in that position myself. And I definitely wouldn't want you to be in that position. So again, it's really about making sure that you're working with the right kind of people from the get-go, from your business formation all the way through. You kind of need a trusted partner. And again, I can't recommend the guys at GenZone enough for that. If you haven't joined the Telegram group already, I'd love to see you in there, because we are planning a get together in September. It's going to be great. So if you are moving to Dubai and you want to start to build friendships and maybe a little bit of a community, that would be a great place for you to be able to do so. The other thing I should mention on this, and this is a bit of a side note, is that things are ever changing here in Dubai. They're introducing all kinds of licenses, and like literally, there's a confusion as to whether or not, if you've got a trade license, whether these additional licenses are required. I'm going to give you an example. They have social media influencer licenses. They've just launched an advertiser license. So with my business, I have marketing services as part of my trade license. Does that mean I need an advertising license as well? It was announced. There's not really a lot of information or context guidance around, well, if you're in this situation, it does apply. If you're in this situation, it doesn't apply. That doesn't exist. So this is a fast-paced change in environment. When you move here, expect that there are going to be surprises, because potentially I might have to pay an extra 2,000 dirhams or 15,000 dirhams for an additional license, even though I've registered my business already and I paid the circa what the equivalent of 5,000, 6,000 pounds to do so. There's a lot changing here, so just be aware of that. But look, I love to see you in the Telegram group. I hope you got value from this. If you have any questions, answer them down below. My plan is to get ask them down below, not answer them, ask them down below. My plan is to get Kevin on to a podcast where we can talk about this a little bit more in depth. If your questions are in the comment section, I will likely pose them to him because he is the expert. But yeah, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you later on. Cheers.